Let's check in on Fox News. You know, I want to get into a really interesting thing that took place yesterday and a few things that took place yesterday on their airwaves. But before, really contemplate, as someone who talks about news and who does nominally a similar job as someone like Hannity, a different scale, of course, but I sit in front of a camera and I talk about news. Okay? I really don't know how you could feel at all good about yourself going into work and just being the equivalent of state-run media. Genuinely. Like, if you think about Russian state media, they are as critical of Putin as a Hannity is of Trump. And they will do as many dishonest things for Putin as Fox News will do for Trump. Maybe some people on Fox are different. That's the case. But someone like Hannity will bend over backwards no matter what to give positive press toward Trump. And what's funny is he projects that onto mainstream media, which we've been covering the goings on, I should say, of mainstream media for years now. And while outlets like MSNBC, of course, have more liberal voices than conservative voices, they would tilt liberal. There's just no equivalency to that versus what Fox News will do for Trump. And this is a perfect example of it. Mediaite reported on the clip you're going to see saying Hannity edits Trump spokesperson's response to omit stunningly erroneous claims, insists she dominated the reporter. And actually, I think, because I do want to credit the prop person, Asen on X caught this first. Hannity airs video of a segment of today's press briefing where a reporter challenged Caroline Leavitt's claim that tariffs are paid by foreign countries and are a tax cut, except they edited that part out and labeled it Caroline Leavitt Schools Associated Press reporter. And so with that being said, let's take a look at what they broadcasted on Fox News, edited versus what actually took place, because they had to edit it this way for it to look like Leavitt destroyed this Associated Press reporter. Here we go. Listen to Hannity here. If you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button.
All right, the state-run legacy media mob has clearly not learned their lesson. Despite their rapidly declining relevance, they are still trying to make a name for themselves. But no surprise, picking fights. They do it by picking fights with the Trump administration every chance they get. Watch this exchange between...
I'm sorry. I do want to play the rest of this, but why does Hannity talk like he's never read off a teleprompter? I don't read off a teleprompter anymore, but I tried it maybe a year or two ago, and it's kind of difficult. But he's been doing this for like 100 years, okay? Why is he still so bad at it? All right, listen, it sounds sort of like, you know, whenever coaches, he kind of gives the vibe of a coach when high school coaches have to teach history and then they're reading and they don't really know what. All right, listen. So someone named George Washington, apparently he was a big guy. He was the equivalent of maybe a Brady. I don't know. He was the Michael Jordan of America. If you'll write a report on that, then listen to that part again with that in mind.
All right, the state-run legacy media mob has clearly not learned their lesson. Despite their rapidly declining relevance, they are still trying to make a name for themselves. But no surprise, picking fights. They do it by picking fights with the Trump administration every chance they get. Watch this exchange between an AP reporter and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Take a look.
Did you write that?
When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious,
he's not doing
why.
that.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
They
don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
Checkmate.
Checkmate. Jaden is sneezing. Apologies for that. Check. Does he know what checkmate means? Maybe checkmate Caroline. She just got checkmated. Yeah, so I guess maybe with those cuts, you'd think, oh, she had a strong response. And by the way, for our viewers, especially full show viewers, you're going to hear some sneezes. You just are. Okay, frankly, you're going to hear some sneezes. Jaden has been dominated by allergies, like apparently Caroline Leavitt dominated that reporter. So that's that. But good thing he's behind a curtain so it doesn't get all over me. But here's the full unedited exchange. And you'll notice the very thing that prompted the reporter to ask the question he did, which is Caroline Leavitt's misunderstanding. She says, how dare you challenge my understanding of economics? Well, it's because of what they cut out of that clip, which is your misunderstanding of economics.
You're welcome.
If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. I'm curious why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people, and the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to
get rid of them all, no taxes.
All three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
They
don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
So that's the full exchange. Do you notice what prompted the reporter to ask the more hostile, maybe Fox would describe it as, question? Was her saying that tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. Tariffs are a tax cut when they're literally, and I'm not using that in the way that too many people use it. This literally killed me. Literally is a tax increase. It is increasing the tax that a company has to pay whenever they import. But which company? American companies. But apparently, with the little edited, mixed up version that Fox played, it's Caroline Leavitt Schools Associated Press reporter. That was the lower third chyron. And Hannity, who didn't see the full cut, someone else did that. You could tell by how little he understands what the words are coming on the screen that someone else also wrote. And he ends it by saying that was a checkmate. When Caroline Leavitt said two things. First of all, she's argued, and this was another bit of context they didn't include, media saying, by falsely claiming that exporting countries pay tariffs and bizarrely insisted that tariffs are actually tax cuts for Americans. And so you left out the context of her asserting that foreign countries are paying the tariff, and you left out the context from within that back and forth of her making the ridiculous claim, leading the Associated Press reporter saying what he did, that tariffs are tax cuts. That's just turning the world upside down. And so what does Fox have to do to make their viewers think that Leavitt is telling the truth or is acting powerfully, is dominating in front of the podium? They have to edit it, which is interesting given that Trump has made a big deal of deceptive edits, except he found an example of a normal edit as interviews are edited where there wasn't deception, but is constantly benefiting from actual deceptive editing. Fox has the right to do it. I don't think they should have their license revoked. They have the right to do it. But it can be deceptive. And it's the very thing they accuse CBS of doing wrongly. Now, as we continue through the Fox News lineup, at one point on Hannity, you had Kudlow come on. And I say this with utter grace and kindness and love. But is Kudlow about to fall asleep?
I mean, look, Sean, part of this business, the stock market's selling off over tariffs. I think that's crazy. Tariffs are not inflationary. Tariffs are not going to lead to a recession. Trump.
Why is it so long?
Tariffs are not going to lead.
Kudlow.
I think that's crazy. Tariffs are not inflationary. Tariffs are not going to lead to a recession. Trump's reciprocal tariff policy is very good. And you saw the Canadian back off today promptly when.
Yeah. Listen, Sean, tariffs are not inflationary. Yes, they are. Okay. Again, what do you call costs going up because of an extra expense that companies now have to pay because of Trump's tariff policy? But Kudlow says he absolutely loves it. He also perpetuated this false claim.
But the fraud, like Social Security, people are 150 years old getting Social Security checks, which is insane.
I mean, it's insane. It honestly is insane. It's not true, but it's crazy. It's a fake story, but it's wild. I mean, it's completely made up, but it's fraudulent. I won't do it again. They're just making stuff up. It's not true. The thing that they found was the database's documentation of people, and the death hasn't properly been documented because of the technology or the system that was being used at the time not being up to date. But the benefits aren't being sent out to those people. But they keep saying it, and I don't know why. Trump's economic actions, while popular among Kudlow, who's very excited to tell Hannity about it, not as popular among the American people.
Key question, the economy. It is by far issue number one for voters. Nothing really comes close overall for Americans. And on that score, he's actually performing a tick below his overall approval rating. 44% approve of his handling of the economy. You see that there below his job overall there, the economy 44%. 56%, Sarah, disapprove. He is minus 12 percentage points on the issue that Americans say is the most important. That is not a great place to be.
And what's interesting is, instead of thoughtfully, again, I have to watch a lot of these right-wing outlets to prepare to tell you about what they're saying. And it's not like they come forward and say, here is the thoughtful analysis as to why this is reasonable. There's just a lot of, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. You heard Kudlow. It's great. It's not inflationary, or it's a tax cut. They're just saying stuff. They're just turning reality upside down, just saying it. It's weird. Like, imagine, for example, if I just kept going, no, Joe Biden is 50. He's 50. He's 50 years old, and he's not showing a single sign of aging at all. He is 50. You say he's 80? He's not. He's 50. That's the equivalent. They're just saying, no, reality is not what it is. Then, meanwhile, you have this reporting.
CNN that the U.S. Department of Education is going to start a sweeping round of layoffs, and it's going to begin tonight. Let's go right to CNN Sunlen Serfati. Sunlen, you say that these job cuts look to be steep.
They certainly will be, Jake. 3 sources telling CNN that tonight the Department of Education will start making a series of layoffs, sweeping amount of layoffs, 50% of their workforce.
The ultimate goal, McMahon has admitted, is for the entire Department of Education to be shut down. So they're starting by cutting half. And apparently that's how we make education better. How, you say? Well, here's one Republican trying to explain.
The Department of Education is tasked with protecting disabled students across America. And Jamie Raskin, for example, is all out there saying, how are you going to defend this? So let me ask you.
Well, I think it's simple. That will be done at the state level. A federal bureaucrat who's in Washington, D.C. can't protect schools and kids in Indiana. That has to be done at the local level. And that's why getting the federal government out of the way and letting schools take care of these issues with those tax dollars that will be spent, more tax dollars spent at the local level will help that happen in a much better way than anything that happens in Washington.
So this sounds nice to people, right? Just give that tax. No. The tax dollars, there's less tax will be paid. Give it to our education. Well, then Indiana, you're going to have a good, it's going to be great. It's going to be good. And it sounds nice to some people. But why was the Department of Education created in the first place? Well, because there was a gap between where people should be and where we want them to be. And there was a lot of inequality between states. And do you know which states have bigger problems with education? Red states. Red states. The top 15 red states, the top 15 states that receive the most in educational investments from the Department of Education are red states. We're trying to help you, MAGA. And so the reason why getting rid of this would be so disastrous is actually it's blue states that pay more out than they get back invested in the state, pay more into the federal government, that then help to uplift many red states and some blue states, but many red states who, without the support of the federal government and that subsidization, would fall even further below the line that we want them to be at. We're talking about basic funds for schools to provide lunch, to provide teachers, to provide special needs support, etc., etc., etc. And it's the Republicans trying to screw the Republican states. And it's honestly really sad. Share your thoughts in the comments.